Well, it's November 15th, 2025, and time is flying like a great blue heron soaring across the sky. And today we are joined by Irena Byriel in Australia. And she is a intuitive channeler and a deep researcher. We're going to talk about human sovereignty today, and I'm very excited to have Irena on the show. Welcome to the show, Irena.
Hello, Jock. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here and have this discussion.
It's kind of an amazing thing. You're a very unique person with, I think it must have been a very unique life path so far. And we can only imagine where your life's going to go from here. When you were young, did you know at some point that you had an ability to be a bridge to other frequency realms?
Yes and no. I would say that I had certain experiences, but it probably wasn't really up until just before I was 20 years old that I really started to experience things and realize that, okay, I don't think this is necessarily what everyone else is experiencing. And I did struggle in my younger years because I never understood the systems of this planet. I really struggled in school, particularly in high school, because I'd reached, I guess, a stage of general maturity and questioning things. And I was actually very rebellious in high school. I was a good student, but I was also very rebellious. I was challenging the system. I would get into arguments with the vice principal. I got expelled. I mean, not expelled, suspended a couple of different times because I just wasn't known as necessarily cooperating everything. And it was quite a religious school that I went to. And so I
Oh,
would have debates with the pastor, and he could never answer any of my questions. And I love writing like you do, and I would write strange creative pieces where I would explain my emotional confusion of how this reality was playing out and the systems that were dominating it. I would definitely, when I was probably 15 years old up, I would start submitting these. It was like my favorite class, you know what I mean, English class, and I would write about things, and some of them were very, very dark, the thoughts that I would enter into. And it really wasn't until after I graduated high school where I sort of looked back at some of the writings that I did, and I was like, that's not exactly normal. And I wonder what my teachers must have thought.
well, they were creative writing exercises, right?
Yeah, different assignments and that kind of thing. Yeah.
So, I mean, they could only appreciate the fact that you're extending the boundaries of creativity in your essay. I mean, that must have been cool. I mean, maybe some of the things were dark, but I mean, gosh, some of the best literature is incredibly dark, you know?
Yes. Well, I always got A's for those submissions.
Oh, good.
Um, but when, it's like you look back and you go, wow, I was really questioning this entire reality that we're in and the systems that were really leading humans, and how they didn't make sense to me and how I would feel frustration and anger from that age.
That's so interesting. You know, on a slightly smaller scale, I guess, I questioned, I didn't understand linoleum. So we had linoleum in our kitchen, and I would look at it and go, what is this? Like, why do we have this instead of, say, stone or whatever? And it was just a little tiny glitch in the matrix for me. It was like a window into something's not right. Now you went much farther with it much earlier on, obviously, but just about that age, I was thinking about linoleum, and but so what were the key events in your life, do you think, that encouraged you to go beyond what we might call the matrix life?
I just want to start off by saying that I think we all have some level of these experiences. So I'm sure that anyone listening to this is like, oh my gosh, yeah, there was that one occasion, or yeah, there were several occasions where I didn't understand it and I felt all this frustration or I was questioning things. So I do think that on to a degree, it's very, very normal. And I think it's great that people are curious. I think it's one of the foundations to the human experience. And it's better to question things and be curious. But, like many other people that are sort of on this journey right now, that's spiritual, I definitely incarnated into a very dysfunctional family.
Oh.
So I think from a young age I was already confused because what I was observing, around me wasn't necessarily what I was experiencing at home. But I think that's very, very normal for people who are here to maybe challenge some of the systems. I think that we choose to be born into these families. So I'm not really angry about it or anything like that. I think everything happens for a reason. But I definitely knew from a young age that there were other energy forms of existence, that were interacting in our home or in the people around me, or that maybe were influencing them in some way. So at the time, maybe I didn't like it. But now when I look back on it, I understand, and it's helped me along my journey. But I would probably say the most significant experiences started to happen in my dream state. They were probably where it really started, happening for me, that I was tapping into more than this reality.
So what kind of dreams are we talking about? I mean, and what age were you when you started having dreams that you felt were, say, unusual?
I'd probably say late teenager
Hmm.
years. Um, there were specific dreams where I would be telepathically being spoken to. One catalyst dream that was really powerful for me was a repeated dream that I had where I could hear it was like children's voices repeatedly calling out to me. It probably quite scary for the average person, to be honest. But it would repeat and they would be asking me to help them. They'd be like, help me, help me, help me. And it was quite disturbing. And I remember telling like my mother about it. They were like energy forms, just a lot of them trying to communicate to me in dream state. And the other, I would say, particularly catalyst dream was, I mean, look, we're all going into other dimensions when we sleep. It's completely normal. Everyone does it. You don't need to be a medium. You don't need to have a special ability to do it. Your consciousness is completely unlimited in dream state. But these were a little bit more specific. So I would go into this different dimension of awareness, and all I could see was colors. That's usually how it happens. And very, very vibrant. It's like plasmic morphing energy colors, and I'd be telepathically spoken to. And the biggest one of all what happened was it was trying to tell me about someone in my life at that time. And they were trying to say, you don't know who, you don't really know who he is. You don't really, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot more to him. You don't understand. What you're seeing is not the full truth. And when I woke up from that dream, it was almost a little bit traumatic what happens to the nervous system. And so I had felt like I had run a marathon. And it was like, it's like your nerves are having this weird experience of coming back into this particular dimension of consciousness because it's so high, the vibration and the energy forms that I was interacting with was very, very high. So it takes a period of time for the nervous system to like get used to it, like being back in this reality when you wake up.
Yeah, that's really interesting because the reason that I found you about, I don't know, 6 days ago was because I saw your comment on Joe Rogan's clip about having that dream where he saw the tall, thin beings, and he woke up at 3 o'clock and then lay in bed for an hour, and then he said, I can't get back to sleep. I'm going to go work out. So he worked out, and he never went back to sleep. he was so messed up. And you had a comment, and you said, "Do you
It
remember what?"
wasn't his subconscious. It wasn't his subconscious. It was his consciousness actually experiencing a different layer of reality, having an actual exchange. So there's a dream, right, where it is your subconscious. You can experience that, and we experience them all the time. But then there is different states where you are actually partially aware, and you actually experience your consciousness is really experiencing that particular exchange. And they're not normal. You will know that they are not normal because you will have an experience, and you like he did, his nervous system was greatly impacted and he could not go back to sleep. And so he naturally he works out a lot, right? So that was his natural reaction, was like, Oh, I'm so fired up right now. The only way that I know how to deal with something like this is to, go work out, which is very normal for most men. But that's how you can tell he was impacted significantly, more than just a subconscious thing. He was interacting with a different vibration, and they were the tall whites. I mean, if you've researched into different extraterrestrial races, the tall whites are a very common experience for people to have interaction with.
Yeah, I just looked up the tall whites this morning because I wanted to know, because in your comment you mentioned the tall whites in this very
Yeah.
brief little comment that you made to try to help Joe Rogan, if you ever read that comment, or anyone else who listened to Joe talk about his dream, saying, "I've never had a dream like this, like what is this?" And you
Mm.
mentioned the tall whites. They are said to be slender, and you said thin, and I was like, okay, so everything's lining up. But when I saw your comment, I thought, this is super interesting. I wonder who made this comment. Found a bunch of your Instagram videos, and I was like, huh, maybe I should have her on the show because. And then I saw your most recent video where you have this kind of mysterious smile on your face, and you're like, what would humanity do if they knew that there's not a magic man in the sky who created us, and we didn't evolve from primates, but we found out that we were genetically engineered, and you just thought it was awesome, and but what would humanity do?
Yeah, I create videos like that because I want to put it out into the collective. I want humans to start asking these questions. I want to stimulate that energy within our collective consciousness. And it's also going to stimulate the quantum field that we're within. So it can help, with the timeline.
Right. So for people who see, I started this podcast, I don't know, a couple years ago because I wanted to help people in the transition, people who were, say, eating at McDonald's and had absolutely no clue about the Matrix. So for those people who are new to all of this, and I was new to all of this, just like most people were when they were younger, we're all new to it at some point. So I have sympathy. I empathize with people who don't know what you're talking about when you say something like, what will people do when they find out we were genetically engineered? So can you give us like a brief rundown of how it might have happened, or how you believe it happened, or how you've seen it in your vision happen, how our race came into being through time?
Okay, so I'm going to swing back to that. But one thing that I just, before we move on to this question, the reason that I also posted that on Joe Rogan's video was because sometimes I do feel frustration at the academic sort of perspectives of this planet and humans, because it's very, very limiting. And the person that he was interviewing immediately tried to break it down from an extremely limited perspective. And so I had to just throw it out there. And I knew there's some people will respond, some people won't. But yeah, it's frustrating. That's all. Yeah. So look, the question that you have asked is that's a very long conversation to have. As you know, and people have different perspectives on this, and then you can go into the different harmonics of the planet and the different timelines. But I definitely can tell you where I'm at now and my understanding, and it really took me quite some time to really get to this point, is that there are different prototypes of humans. And when I say prototype, I'm talking about almost different models of genetic modification of the human species on this planet, right? I think that there were several different root races, and I think some of them have been wiped out from this planet previously. Some people have also, when I've had conversations with people, they said that they have asked AI of ChatGPT this question as well, and it actually agreed with my perspectives and kind of reiterated those those perspectives. So I don't know if that's, what you necessarily align with. I know that you talk about the Terran and the planet being Terra. People have different perspectives. in the sense of there's different harmonics of the planet and the different timelines of resonance. And so I obviously have heard of Terra, but the only time that I really heard of it was in a more ancient format and in a more of a 3D format. So then you've got people who say, no, the planet's name is Gaia, because that's like a different resonance or harmonics of this planet. So it's like a different timeline of this planet as well. And then you've got Tara, which they say Tara is a much more excelled timeline. It's a much higher resonance or a different density of the planet. And then that's when it's called Tara. But then it's called Earth as well. But from my knowledge, Earth and Terra are more affiliated with the same resonance as opposed to the other names. So I'm sure this is making sense to you, but yeah.
Yeah, and for those who are new to these kinds of discussions, basically one of the most fundamental concepts that people use in these kinds of discussions is frequency realms. So certain beings, for instance, can live in certain frequency realms that are not our frequency realm, and they will be invisible to us because they're in a higher realm. They can see us if they want to. They can interact with us. And then if we advance enough in our own personal lives, we can begin to interact with them in a conscious way, let's say in the fourth dimension. Then you've got the fifth dimension or fifth density, because it's all about frequency, the density of frequencies, realms. Then you've got sixth, seventh, eighth, and beings inhabit all these different realms, and each realm has its own rules. So I just want to just lay that out because you're mentioning these terms, and that density of frequency is essentially synonymous, I hope, for most people with dimension. So dimension and density are really synonymous terms.
So they're related, but they're not the same thing. So density and dimension are not necessarily the same thing. That's from my awareness. So I personally stay away from the word realm because people can get very confused when you say realm, and they'll think that it's something that's kind of separate from this particular reality. And so from my understanding and what I've tapped into, it's really just blended. So they're all running through each other. Every dimension is running through each other. But density is like a different thing. For example, if you access books like The Law of One or other channeling books, they will reference dimension and density as different things. And I'll describe much more advanced beings being much higher in density. Whereas you could talk about a lower dimension also being more dense, but that's also a separate thing. I'm just doing this just so we're a little bit clearer with the terms and references, that I might use or that you might use. So this is a much more dense reality that we're in, right? A lower reality, a dualistic reality, a polarized reality that's experiencing a certain level of separation within itself. But you could go up into speaking to, like the Law of One will reference, a social memory complex. And that's when the density is it's much higher, but in an accelerated way, in an evolved way. So in the Law of One, for example, when they're communicating through that channel, of the beings that come through will reference themselves as being a much higher density, like at least sixth density. So they're no longer operating as individual, right? They don't have the ego experience. They're a social memory complex. They're basically operating as a much more collective energy experience.
Right.
So,
And this is raw. They say we are raw in the Law of One.
yep.
And I think that it's reasonable to assume or to conclude that this race is the blue avians. Other people might say that that's not the case, but that's what I've concluded. What do you think about that?
I don't 100% know. I don't have a definitive answer on it. at all. Um, I don't even call them a race, to be honest. I really just see them as what they reference as a social memory complex. So I don't really put a label on those types of things.
Right.
Uh,
Sixth density, it's super interesting. Or would you call it sixth density or sixth dimension that they live in?
I really am not 100% sure on what they would reference their dimension as, but sixth density would be the level of awareness that they have evolved to. Does that make sense? So dimension being a little bit different. So and I'm yeah, so I'm not entirely sure. And it's dimensions tricky because we are in so many different dimensions of resonance, our consciousness itself. And, from what I understand, there's an oversoul and it's fragmented. And so we're actually you and I right now is we're just one particular soul fractal where we are observing and interpreting this experience, but we're in so many other dimensions and so many other timelines. So I think it's tricky. I think people sometimes want to interpret dimension as, oh, well, then there's this and then there's this, because humans are very programmed to understand structure in the way of being, going up in something, being
Right,
promoted in something,
right.
graduating in something, going up in age. There's very linear concept of reality, and I don't actually think that's accurate at all. In fact, when I say that humans should, or I encourage the expansion of consciousness, I really describe that as going out as opposed to going up in anything, because everything is running through each other. Like all dimensions are running through each other. So like you were saying, there's just different dimensions of resonance. It's just like different sounds. It's just different sounds and different keys on a keyboard, but they're all simultaneously existing at the same time, running through each other. So that's why I stay away from the word realm, because it's like a very old esoteric occult term that I think confuses humans and can sometimes limit them in going back into that format of like, oh, well, you go up, right? Oh, we were going through an ascension, we're ascending. Oh, we're going up. And it's like, no, it's not. You're actually just expanding out. That's it.
Right. So that's really key to get the terminology clear. And you have a whole video on terminology that you made a while back, and you talk about what the word spiritual means. And you said it's not to do with religion, for instance.
Yeah.
And you define various terms that you're going to use, and you do this in a very methodical way, because you understand the importance of not just throwing words out there. I think a lot of people are using the word spiritual and have never once thought to define it in their own minds.
Yeah, I think spiritual gets very confused with humans just because of the programming that they're working from and operating from. So we're all part of a collective consciousness. And when we reference the matrix is a certain structure which has different programs. Just really, if you really view it like a computer system, it's much easier for humans to actually, I think, digest and comprehend. So they're just working from these default programs that they're aware of. But these default programs, if you go back, I mean, thousands and thousands of years, we don't actually know. Like we don't necessarily know what that particular programming is. And if we're going to reference, these different root races or like Atlantis or the Lemuria, these were different, in my opinion, different resonances of the timeline, and I don't think that they were necessarily experiencing reality and life in the same way that we were. I think they were a completely different prototype, and so what they were working from and what they're programming was probably quite different. So we've been engineered in a certain way, and we're only working from this prototype and how it's been functioning and what it defaults back to. So there's certain types of dominating religions or ideologies that have dominated this particular matrix or programming that we're aware of and that we're tapping into. And a lot of humans only know how to interpret from that type of programming, right? Or if they get scared, they'll default back to their form of programmed spirituality. So they'll go back to Jesus Christ, or some other figure that is very, their energy still exists within the collective consciousness, and then that's their savior. But you go to the other side of the world, the other person's like, no, Buddha's my savior. It's like this same programming that just happens, but they're just identifying it with whatever default program is correlated to, like, the country they're from, their ancestors, like just the society and how it's been particularly influenced. But spirituality, for me, is really just the unseen. It's our connection with the unseen, with our own divinity, our sovereignty. I don't think humans are very far in their understanding of what spirituality is. Like, spirituality is the sciences of this unseen as well. I really think it's just our own divinity and our own connection to divinity, and us trying to understand that and have a relationship with it.
That's a key term when we're talking about human sovereignty is divinity, right?
Yeah, you could say it's the same thing. Some people might interpret it as being the same thing. But I think what goes hand in hand with that is multidimensionality and us being multidimensional beings. I think that if you want to look from a little bit more of a scientific perspective, that we're quantum beings, that reality is quantum, and that it's multidimensional.
You continually emphasize the multidimensionality of reality and of ourselves, and you're like, well, we are experiencing reality as a fractal of what we are. So this is super interesting, and I want to ask you, do you think, and your answer may not be either one of these choices, but do you think that we made a contract to forget, to give up all of our memories of past experiences, past lives, before we came to Terra or Gaia or Tara? Or perhaps did the Matrix take our memories from us?
I think it's a combination, and I don't think the contracts, because you'll hear that a lot in esotericism, and different spiritual teachings. I don't think contracts are in the same way that humans are interpreting contracts. I think that part is probably a little bit beyond our comprehension. That's my honest opinion. But I do also agree with the second part of what you said. I do think that things have been intentionally manipulated in certain ways.
We can't really look at the world and think that we're not being manipulated all day. And now we have dream technology where they're trying to get into our dreams and manipulate us there, and have been. It's not just that they're going to start tomorrow. They've been doing that. So I just had an interview with Barry Littleton about this called Neuro Rights. And it was basically about how are we going to handle the fact that our minds are not just being infiltrated during the day, but during our dreams. And they're giving us specific dreams that they hope will turn into memories, and they believe will turn into memories, so that even our memories of our own lives will be affected. So it's like the technology is pretty crazy out there. Now, what do you think? You've said that you are a portal to your own sovereignty. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I just want to say also
Yeah.
that it's just consciousness. Do you know what I mean? When they're tapping into the dream state, it's just consciousness. Everything, and I've mentioned this to you before, and this also leads into the whole sovereignty, and us being portals. Everything comes down to consciousness and sovereignty. And there's a lot of people that debate me on this, and they'll say, no, it's this, and no, it's that. It's just consciousness, right? Joe Rogan having that experience, it's consciousness, right? It's literally, it's the glue that binds everything. We are from consciousness. We don't create consciousness. We are within consciousness. So if they're going to tap or manipulate or hack into anything, it's consciousness. Now, the only way that you are going to minimize that from happening is your own realization and remembering of your own sovereignty. So honestly, these go hand in hand for me, these two things. And that's why, after such a long time of researching and experiencing and tapping into things, I cannot come to any other conclusion. Everything is under the umbrella of consciousness. I had somebody try and debate me and say, no, suffering is one of the main topics. It's the journey of the suffering and understanding the suffering and emancipating yourself from the suffering or transmuting yourself from the suffering. And I'm like, suffering is within consciousness. It's a byproduct of conscious, of different aspects or experiences of consciousness. It is the umbrella, right? It transcends all dimensions. Suffering does not transcend all dimensions. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's very, very, very limited to certain dimensions of experience. But consciousness is just, it's everything. It's not limited to anything. It's the thing that we want our sciences to explore, our psychology to explore. It is everything. Everything should be geared towards consciousness. It is the solution, and it's the thing that's being manipulated. That is how the matrix gets manipulated, right? It's because it's impacting states of consciousness, or our state of consciousness within our own collective consciousness. And we are all portals. We all are. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how old your soul is, how advanced you are, how researched you are, whatever. It doesn't matter. We are all portals and we all can access it. And that's why, for me, I was like, this is what I want to teach people. This is what I want to activate in people. It's the sovereignty, it's the divinity, it's understanding that you do not have to fall prey, or you do not have to fall victim to these types of manipulation and these fear systems once you tap into your sovereignty. Once you tap into your sovereignty, you will understand your power, that you are unlimited, that you're infinite, you're multidimensional. Nobody can take that away from you. No demon, no organization, no amount of money, no extraterrestrial, nothing. No one can take that away from you. It is your birthright, no, not even just in this dimension. You know what I mean? You are a fractal of source energy. It is part of what you are. It's something that can transform your life. And if you nurture seeking your sovereignty, you are going to unlock so many different potentials within yourself, within your DNA, within your cellular structure, within your ancestral energy cords, everything within, to your other soul fractals that are existing in other timelines. You can merge with all of them through consciousness, but you need to understand sovereignty. You need to understand who you really are. And that can only come through sovereignty and understanding your own divinity. It's a reflection of self-worth, self-respect, self-empowerment, self-love. It's the key to all of these things. And if you really study esotericism and different occult philosophies, they all pretty much highlight the importance of sovereignty at the end of the day. I mean, it's part of enlightenment, sovereignty. It is. And it's not realizing that you're powerful in the way that you're higher or separate from anyone else. It's realizing that we are all just one, that the only truth is just oneness. That is what enlightenment is. It's just understanding that there's just oneness. That's it. You are the original source. We all are the original source. There's really no separation of anything. There's only unity. So that's all a part of our sovereignty. It will really help your human experience because you'll learn to observe this reality, and instead of processing it from a reaction state, an absorption and reaction state. That's a harder way to experience this reality, because you really minimized your level of awareness of your sovereignty when you're interpreting reality in that way. You want to be able to expand and observe everything, and not absorb things like a sponge from egoic processing. You're very emancipated. You respect the ego. You understand its purpose. It's there for your identity. It's a functional mechanism of a lower dimension. It's necessary. Like you cannot get rid of the ego. It is part of the human experience. It's your identity here. It's a unique thing that Source is experiencing itself through. We only have a certain amount of time where we can, you know, experience it through this unique perspective of a fractal. You know, we have to enjoy it. And once you step into your sovereignty and activate that more, you just don't operate from fear. You honestly don't. You don't care about the digital IDs. You don't care about the injections. You don't have fear of anything because you know you can override anything. You know that you understand the illusion on such a different level. You understand the construct of how the matrix is programmed, and you realize, oh, I can just recode myself. I don't actually have to be scared of the manipulation that's actually happening because I know my sovereignty. I understand this. You know, they can limit it and not make and try and make me not realize my own sovereignty, which is what they do. But you can rewrite everything. You can override coding in your own system. That is a part of healing too. You can override things genetically within yourself. You can heal yourself. You can recode the limitations of this matrix. And that's why I encourage people to connect, or through their sovereignty, they're naturally going to understand that they have these other soul fractals, which might even be more advanced than them in other timelines. And you can kind of merge it here in this reality. You can nurture that relationship with all of your soul fractals, little bit by little bit. It might be hard, you might not understand it at the time, but you open the portal to here to all these other soul fractals, which are holding all these other different type of activated codes. So I know that this is, some people might not understand the depth of what I'm talking about, but it is probably one of the most single-handedly powerful things you are ever going to realize in the human experience, that you have the ability to recode yourself in almost everything. And if you, once you activate your sovereignty and you keep expanding in consciousness, you're going to realize, oh, I don't actually have to fear anything in this reality, you know. I don't have to fear this whole, oh, it's angels and demons. It's demonic, it's satanic. Yes, so what? Do you know, and what's that? What's Satan? What's a demon? You know, if you ask religious people that, they'll just go, um, it's a fallen angel. It's a lower vibrational energy form. And what's that? And they don't know how to go beyond that. It's like, do you think that's not from source as well? So are you. So if you think that that being or that energy form has more power than you, it's because you haven't unlocked your own sovereignty. You're from source too. It doesn't have any more power than you. If you feel like you're being psychically attacked, you know what I mean? It doesn't, nothing has more power than you. You are from the original source. That is your sovereignty. Once you embody that into your life, you can't be manipulated by anything. You can't even, it's much harder for the matrix to manipulate you because you don't care. You just don't live in a state of fear anymore. So anyway, it's just, I'm very passionate about people unlocking this part about themselves because they will change their timeline. They can completely change the timeline. They can change their vibrational state. Is the most liberating thing you can possibly do.
Academia tells us that a sovereign is a ruler over others, but perhaps we should look at being a sovereign as essentially an empowerment that is not talking about others, but is talking about ourselves. We're not bounded by, our timeless self, our sovereign field is not bounded by time, by matter, by biology, by locality. So it's not like our sovereign timeless self is inside this body. It doesn't have a locality. So when you're talking about the fractal of the original, that we are fractals of the original source energy, I mean, that's a beautiful way to put it. And that we have this egoic perspective. It's just a POV. It's just a POV on reality that we have. That's what the ego is. And Alan Watts, as you may know, sort of made light fun of people who in the spiritual community, and this was 50 years ago, he was making fun of this. They would say, I got rid of my ego. And he'd say, did you now? And why are you telling us that? Because you want us to think you're great. So you didn't get rid of your ego because otherwise you'd just shut up about it. So the ego is not the enemy. The ego is just a perspective. And then, you can get your perspective out of control and say, I want to control everything and be king. But that's an aberration. That's not what a real sovereign is.
Yeah, no, totally. Sovereignty is oneness. It's the realization of oneness, the realization that you are God, the realization that you are an extension of the original source, meaning you are the original source. What greater power is there? There's only oneness. Why do you have to fear a demon? There's only oneness. It's from the same source that you're at. Like it's not special. You know what I mean? It's not it doesn't have more power than you. I mean, do you see how these human systems have been created into all of these like fear states that don't exist? Like they're not even real. This whole hierarchical system of like sovereign power and like it's like a human it's like human programming. I mean, it probably doesn't stem just from humans because there's many other species that still work through power and hierarchical, structures. Um, and that can still go into to other densities and dimensions, of course. It's not like, oh, we go up one level from being a human and oh, self-serving agendas don't exist anymore. They still exist, and there's definitely different species and out there that still have self-serving agendas. But there's no such thing really as a hierarchical structure. There's just oneness. That's just it. That's the whole game. That's the whole illusion of everything. And once you tap into that, you realize you don't even have to take things personally. Like you don't react to the external world in the same way. Your ego doesn't, it's not the main navigational system. It doesn't control how you're interpreting or reacting to anything. It's just you understand that you have a co-relationship with the ego here temporarily. And you're not here to hate it or kill it or get rid of it. You're here to actually create a harmonious relationship with the ego. You should have a respectful exchange with the ego and understand that it's just not your main, it only becomes the enemy when it becomes your main navigational system.
That's really brilliant, actually. That's a good quote. There's two kinds of physics that I've been able to figure out. One's the academic physics, which is separation physics. And then there's ether physics. You could call it quantum. You could call it informational field physics, which is relation physics. So when you're talking about relationships, like even just the relationship between you and the ego, it's like since we live in a resonant field, it's literally gradients of resonance that is our universe. And so, it's a question of what we resonate with, not what the ego is telling us logically should be the case. It's about what we resonate with. So if we are literally in touch with our incredibly sophisticated body that we have, and then of course there's the other level of being in touch with the sovereign field, the timeless self. Then we're navigating by resonance. I mean, it seems like that's the only sustainable path through life. I mean, especially in a matrix like this, where there's so many things coming at us that are trying to push us off of our sovereignty.
I totally agree with you. And everything does come down to vibrational, resonance and frequency. But that goes hand in hand with consciousness. So the more you expand in consciousness, the more that you're going to shift those calculations, those resonances. So that's why, again, consciousness for me is key to all of this, because those things, they're completely tied in with each other.
Right. Now, academia wants to tell us that consciousness is an accident of biology, and that human beings became self-conscious, self-aware, and sort of one step above the other animals just by accident. We have consciousness now because of the brain. And it's like, I don't think that's going to help us advance as a species. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. Honestly, I find it hilarious. I think human sciences are hilarious. And I really think human sciences need to be humbled in many ways. And with AI integrating now, they will be. They will
Good.
be very, very humbled with what comes along with AI and the intelligences that really start to emerge as AI evolves, since it's its own form of consciousness, but they're not aware of that yet. Yeah, I just think it's kind of laughable, and I have people debate me on, on biology and evolution. And it's not that I don't support certain theories of evolution. I do. I think some of those things are obvious, but not certain types of like human evolution, like as in Darwinism. I think it's hilarious because I don't think it makes any sense. I think that it's just an open-ended theory that has just as many other questions. Like it's not proven. It's just a particular theory. Science is always it's always evolving itself. And what's sad is that all these different types of categories of sciences, right? They don't work in harmony with each other. Like there's politics between the different sciences of this planet,
Mm.
and then we wonder why we can't progress. And if there's a phenomenon that occurs, you can't rule that out as nothing. It's a piece of data. It is data, period. I just don't know how you eliminate one piece of data because it's not the main or the ordinary. It's you only need to see one UFO or have one UFO reveal itself to be like, oh, well, this completely changes everything, of our understanding. That's it. You don't need to see a million UFOs to prove that a UFO exists. It's just, sciences of this planet, I think they're complicated. I'm not a scientist though, and I'm not putting down scientists. Science is necessary. It's necessary. It's necessary in other realities and other timelines. Like it's a natural part. But I just think that I'm tapped into the unseen sciences, and I don't bother trying to prove that to scientists. You can't. So I always say to them, I go, if you don't believe, what I say, it's totally cool. It's totally fine with me. No, seriously, you don't have to, because I can't prove it to you.
I
I
know.
just know what I'm experiencing and you know what I mean? And I know that that's real. And I know other people can tap into the same things. So until science is ready to calculate that data, or have scientists experience that too and be able to calculate that data, then it is what it is. I don't really, it's like, the Neo in the Matrix. I mean, you can't teach it to someone. They have to go on that journey themselves. Like that, we're tapping into uncharted territory.
Right. It's like if Neo was asked by one of those people on the street, that was just going to their job that day, what's the nature of reality? And Neo tried to explain it to them. I can you could you if you get to the point of belief, you can stop bullets with your hand just in midair and then pick them out of the air. That they just go, you're insane, put them in a mental institution. Yeah. So you can't start trying to explain to the normies and expect them to just go, you know what? I believe what you're saying. I mean, it's okay to have a conversation, but we can't expect that someone who's channeling information, who has taken deep breaths, relaxed her physical system, gone into a meditative state, accessed the sovereign field, the timeless self, and then bridged the infinite potential field of the ether or the informational field of the quantum field. We can't expect the information that you get to be immediately accepted by the left brain scientists of our day. So you understand that. So when they say, I'm not going to talk to you, or I don't understand what you're saying, and have a nice day, you go, okay, cool, have a nice day. I mean, what can you
Yeah,
do?
I don't. Yeah, I don't. I already know that the theories that they're suggesting are still open-ended. And that's all I need to know.
Hmm.
If it's open-ended, it's open-ended. Like you can keep going on about how much you support that theory. I don't really care. You know what I
Right.
mean? At the end of the day, like you're allowed to believe that that's fine as long as you acknowledge it's open-ended. And when they don't, that's frustrating. And that's when I know that it's not worth continuing that conversation. But I have met some scientists, and I became friends with a couple of them who were very, very fascinated about my experiences and my perspectives. And, they didn't shrug it off, actually. There was a part of them that understood that there was truth, like misunderstood and understood truth to what I was saying. And that it was just, yeah, it was not the norm, but there was potential, with the things that I was saying. So I love that. I love
Yeah.
open-minded people. I think open-minded people are probably one of the most underrated type of people. I really respect them because they just don't put a full stop on anything. You know what I mean? And that's why I'll never respect atheism because they just put a full stop on something, but they can't prove that the full stop is there. You know what I mean? So I don't really respect. I don't really respect that.
Well, I think an open mind is literally the first principle of any scientific endeavor. So, any scientist who doesn't have an open mind is basically saying, well, I'm just pretending to be a scientist.
And I think there's a lot of scientists like that, unfortunately. And I think that's why there's so much politics within their communities, sadly. They really criticize the very, very curious scientists, but I agree that that should be the foundation of what science is. It's the complete curiosity, the endless curiosity of possibilities.
Right. It's like the beginner's mind of Zen Buddhism, because I'm going back to Alan Watts now, and just having that innocence where you have no prejudice, just like a child. You're looking at the universe as a 3 or 4 or 5 year old child, and you're going, what's happening? You're not going, I have this theory and I'm gonna bludgeon my facts until they fit the theory. You're saying, what is happening? What do I see? What do I experience? And so that's a real scientist. And so if they lead by the beginner's mind, the open mind, then that's fantastic. Now, I mean, I have a bunch of books on my desk. I've been studying the Big Bang for quite a long time, the Big Bang Theory. And Halton Arp wrote a book called Seeing Red.
Mm.
And he's pissed. That's why he says Seeing Red, because it's a pun on redshift, and he's pissed. And he's pissed at academics because he was ostracized by academia because he found evidence that falsified the Big Bang. So the Big Bang gives us a young universe in which we would plausibly imagine that we're the first advanced race. And I think that's why they promote this in the sciences, is because it's a controlled system that wants us to think that we're alone in the universe. Because if we knew we had a galactic family, we'd go searching for them. We'd exit the matrix. So, but he found, as an astronomer, evidence that redshift can be intrinsic to stars. So redshift is literally the foundation of this idea that we have an expanding universe from a Big Bang. So they said, you know what? We don't like you anymore. We don't like you because you found scientific evidence that falsifies our fairy tale here in academia. And we're going to ostracize you, and we're not going to give you telescope time. We're going to defund you. Goodbye. And that was it. So he wrote this book, and he's like, watch out for, in a nice way, in the way that academics write. He wrote this thing saying, we should, at the end of the book, he's like, let's look at what academia is doing to scientists who find evidence that goes against their ideas.
Look, I think it's sad. And, what you described, it reminds me of a movie that I remember. I was on a plane. Can't remember where I was flying. I think I was in America at the time. I watched this film on the flight, and it featured the actor, which is, I don't know if you ever saw Slumdog Millionaire, the Indian movie. The main character, I don't remember the actor's name, I apologize, but he's in a movie where he's a genius. He's like a mathematical genius. He's an anomaly. He's a prodigy. And so obviously prodigies don't fit into systems very well because they're quite advanced. And they're really one step ahead, usually, of mainstream academia or mainstream systems. So it really shows the problems that he encounters because he gets like a scholarship because he's so intelligent. But the way that he does mathematics and way he calculates it is beyond any previous ways of calculating. And he would basically come up with, this mathematical theory, and he would basically provide an answer to a very, very, complicated, mathematical question. And I think on one occasion I can't remember the name of the movie. It's something like The Smartest Man Who Ever Lived or something like that. But basically the way that he would see math, he would he could see it.
Hmm.
almost like in his third eye, and he was processing information on a very different level. And when they were like, how did you conclude this answer? Because obviously you need to be able to write the whole theory. You need to break down every equation. You need to show them the formula of how you got to that answer. But he was like, he couldn't really do that because the way he calculated was so advanced. He was obviously like just very merged with the quantum field and higher aspects of himself. So the way that he was processing, it just, they couldn't understand him. And I think that they failed him on one equation because they didn't fit into their system. So they were like, you're a fraud. You can't possibly, because you didn't use any of our established systems. And he's just like, he was just way ahead and was very advanced. I mean, you go back in history, Da Vinci and just all these other people that was so advanced and processing, even Nikola Tesla, they were just processing information and working with the quantum field on a whole other level. And I just think it's very, very sad that we have to try and condense everything down into such a limited comprehension of where humans are currently at. We're nowhere near, we're in our infancies. This prototype is in its infancies and it's being controlled, with how, through obviously with how our telomeres have been cut and things like that. We're very, very limited. But we do have such a greater potential. And I do think, again, we were genetically modified in certain ways in a controlled manner. But I think our sovereignty can allow us to surpass it. I really do, even without permission from anyone or any species.
Well, in the Bible, what is exactly Elohim? Because Elohim is translated as God, but Masoretic Hebrew scholar Moro Biglino, or Bilino, is the way they pronounce it. He says that Elohim actually means many people. That's the literal translation. And then, so if we substitute many people for God in the Bible, every time we see Elohim, then the Bible begins to make a lot of sense, because then we have conflicts between many people, the groups, the different ET races, the gods, who are just species with high technology that could be mistaken for gods because they have high tech. But then the chaos of the Bible makes sense if there's groups of people warring, interbreeding with humans, genetically modifying humans, destroying some other ET's civilization that was here, rebuilding. Some more races come, and it's just that's more explanatory when we look at the actual biblical text than a single God who is called the God of love, but actually ends up genociding populations, murdering everybody. Not everybody. I don't want to be quoted as saying he's murdering everybody, but he murdered a lot of people in the Bible.
Yeah.
We just have to accept that. And he's wrathful, he's vengeful, he's full of like these human emotions that we don't really appreciate in ourselves, and he's supposed to be the God of love. So if we just look at the mistranslation of Elohim, that'll help us a lot. So we have there are a lot of windows into the rabbit holes that we can go down. You mentioned in a previous conversation we had a few days ago that you went pretty far down the rabbit hole, further than maybe many people go, even if they're deep researchers. So do you have any intel for us from deep dark into the rabbit hole?
Yeah. So look, I am 40 years old next year. So I have been on this journey for, quite some time. And a lot of people will often talk to me like I don't know anything because they think I'm in my 20s. And I'm very sure I'm like 5 foot. I'm very little, and I still have a bit of a baby face, and they'll talk down to me a lot of the time. But I am 40 years old next year. I've had a good 2 decades of being at least of a level of awareness, activating a mediumship at a pretty early age, and that only progressing in ways that I don't necessarily wish upon people, to be honest, because it's very confronting. It basically forces you to go down the rabbit hole beyond what people could probably even imagine. it forces you because you're not confined to this reality and its interpretation. You're working with, with your third eye, or you have access to, I guess, communicating with other realities and energy forms. So I can definitely tell you it's not for everyone. Really, going down the rabbit hole, opening your third eye, this is not something that I actually necessarily encourage. I encourage, again, accessing your sovereign self, and that will lead you down the right path you need to go to, and you'll know that and you'll feel that within yourself. But just going, I want to open up my third eye, you could get PTSD from the things that you're going to access and experience. It's not fun. It's like thinking that taking ayahuasca is a simple party drug or something that's, or smoking marijuana. Like, it's the extreme, right? Taking ayahuasca is extreme. You're going to get shown things that you don't want to see. So yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. But again, I have researched right down into like occult philosophies, esotericism, mysticism. Those things all fascinated me. In fact, I was obsessed with it even from my early 20s. I'd say probably my mid 20s is when it really started to accelerate beyond just, oh, I'm having experiences, or why do I know this, blah, blah, blah. It really started to accelerate and became such an obsession that any free time that I had to do anything, I was reading books, I was watching interviews. Like, I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know, or I wanted confirmation about the things that I was tapping into. I wanted to find other people. When I reached my 30s, my early 30s, oh my God, it went on a whole other level. Like, oh, my mediumship went on a whole other level. And I started to just, yeah, tap into things that I didn't necessarily want to know. I started to just understand reality on a whole other level. And I think that I had really opened myself up to, my higher self and other soul fractals that were more advanced. And having access to other energy forms that I could start to openly more communicate with. Some people would say, oh, that's my spirit guide, or, you know what I mean? Or that's my ancestors who are there helping me. There's different names for these types of energy forms, but that became much more prevalent in my life. I could go into trance state, but I had no control over these states. And it's not enjoyable when it's not as controlled. A lot of people will do astral projection, remote viewing, and they'll try and do it in a much more controlled manner, where I was getting pulled into these states and I didn't necessarily have control. And it has such an impact on the physical body and the nervous system, like I spoke about earlier, that it could be a little bit traumatic. There was times where I was honestly experiencing almost like actual portals, and I could see them. There's particularly one type of portal that I was experiencing, and it's like a diamond. So when you zoom into a diamond, right, or you went inside a diamond, it's just these reflections of light, but in almost like a little bit metallic, kind of like, how a diamond just has that special sort of shine about it. But this wasn't a solid form. It morphs. It morphs these fractal reflections, and I couldn't move when I saw that. I was like paralyzed. So it's like you can't. So if you try and bend your finger or your hand, like, it's stiff. So your body's quite stiff when you go into some of these states. And I was looking at it, and I didn't understand what I was actually looking at, because I'm awake. Like, it's like you're in a trance state, but I'm totally conscious of what's happening. And it's like a merging of other realities. So I'm still in this dimension. I'm not asleep. I haven't gone anywhere else. I'm not in a channeled state where I'm not conscious and it's another being, that's coming through. Like, I am conscious. I can see it. It's like I'm seeing more than one dimension that's running through each other. And I remember seeing a being that just appeared, and it honestly scared me, because this was much earlier on when I was starting to tap into this kind of stuff, and it was looking at me. and it was green, like a green gray color, and it had a very big head, but it honestly looked very reptilian. Like, and at that time, like I was younger and I didn't understand. So I just got freaked out sort of immediately because it was staring at me almost like, what are you doing?
Mm.
Like, why can you see this or why are you accessing this? And yeah, it was just, it was really like looking at me. And I wish that I drew it. I mean, I probably still could, but it looked very, it might have not been a reptilian, but it just, that's the only thing that I had seen with different species across my research. So yeah, it was whatever it was much more evolved and it was very, very powerful. And I kind of got myself out of it because I went into a fear state. See, it's this fear state. It just ruins everything because my human mind didn't know what the hell that I was seeing, and the vibration was so strong, and you can't really move, and then it just kind of went away. But experiences like that continue, and you'll just start communicating. You'll be telepathically spoken, and in dream state, I would start. I would have people that I'd never met. I like family members of friends, all these different people that would come to me in my dream, tell me information, tell me about a person in my life. Family members is a huge one. I really don't know why. Family members that I had never met, that had already passed away, and they would talk to me, or just randomly people just tell me information, tell me that they'd just gone through a breakup because he cheated, and it was all real, it was all accurate. I would find out that all of this information was accurate. It's really not for everyone because you're going to find out information about people that you don't necessarily like. You will be able to read energy with people at a very high intuitive level that is very confrontational. Like you will be able to find, there's like, you will realize that a lot of humans are hiding secrets, massive, like a lot of secrets, like they're cheating on their partners, and I would tap into it and it was very unpleasant. Like I don't even want to necessarily know what's happening. I don't want any of the drama. But that's what happens with certain types of intuitive readings and mediumship. You actually really just have all these other energy forms that want to give you information about these people, or they'll act a certain way, but you have, okay, I'm going to, sorry, this is all over the place because I'm trying to explain something that is not within this reality. It's like a merged reality. And so I'm trying to find a way that people can comprehend this because it's, at the time, it's like a very out of this world experience. And you don't interpret the information necessarily from the third dimensional personality that you're experiencing here. It's like these higher exchanges can happen. And when you do energy work on people, all humans, right? Okay, I'm going to find a way to explain this a little bit better. Okay, so when you start to open up and you start to expand and your intuition starts to really, really increase into like a type of clairvoyancy, you're going to realize that all of these humans that are surrounding you, that is just one aspect of what they are. Now, you already know this, and some of you out there listening are already going to understand this. Like, yeah, okay. So most people are experiencing this soul fractal through what I call a third dimensional personality. So they're interpreting and they're experiencing, and they think they know who they are because they understand, their background or basic traumas or what they like and don't like. But it's just one aspect from that soul fractal's perspective. Because when you start to interact people from a heightened state, you realize that there's other layers to them that are in other dimensions, and they have other energy forms around them, and you can communicate to all of them. You can communicate directly with the high self. And when I realized that I could do types of healing and activation to people, I would experience more than one reality simultaneously. And I would do energy work on people. But when I would tell people that, they would be like, why would you do that? You need to ask permission from them. You need to do that. And I go, yeah, I do, but I'm already asking the higher aspect. Because if you go directly to the third dimensional personality, I mean, they're going to get scared. They're not going to understand. Uh, they'll give you information, but it's not even accurate because they're just answering from the third dimensional personality and they don't really know what's going on. So there is actually a way for you to communicate with the high dimensional aspect of that person because you have merged with your higher aspects. And so there's this communication that's actually going on a much higher level. That's a real thing. And I'm not the only person who can do this. Obviously, there's other clairvoyants that this is their reality. That can get noisy sometimes because one person's talking to you and they're telling you this, oh yeah, this blah blah blah, yeah, no, I'm fine, and you have this other layer of them that's communicating something much more different and more true. Like that what's coming from those aspects is the real information that's coming through. And that's when you learn, wow, this person's literally, they're just lying to me. Like their mouth is just spitting out lies and they're not telling me the truth. That can get very, very uncomfortable. And that becomes your normal daily life. And you don't necessarily want to engage with people in a direct way. Like you don't necessarily want to stare into another individual's eyes for too long because if you start to do that, then you're really going to start to tap in to their energy and you just want to live your life, like I get why some clairvoyants go mad or they honestly go on substance abuse because it's like a very complicated mixed reality. Again, it's not that I don't want humans to progress and be able to access this for themselves because I believe all humans can do this. All humans have the potential. I'm not special. No other media is special. They're just accessing something that all humans can access. And for whatever reason, we're accessing it earlier or we came into this world with activated in a certain way. So I want all humans to be able to access this, but you have to understand that you're going to be merging with energy in a very different way to what you're used to. So as long as you try and understand that and you don't let it hurt your life in a way where it has, complicated for some other people. They can go a little bit. They can retreat. Do you know what I mean? They can go off grid. They can pull away from the human experience because it's a little bit overbearing for them. So they can isolate themselves, which you hear about gurus doing. Like, I understand why the gurus go into the mountains and they go into the caves and just remove themselves from society because it is very hard to live your reality amongst these fake systems, completely fake systems, these government systems, these societal structures, like they're just completely man-made. And you're not even interpreting reality from that anymore, from that perspective anymore. You just understand that none of that even matters and it can't define any of your perspectives. There's many, many, many experiences, but I think one of the scariest things that I ever really tapped into was in more recent times because now that AI has integrated, and this year our collective has experienced significant shifts, and even in its own timelines, that a lot of intuitives, clairvoyants, mediums, people are tapping into more than they've ever tapped into before. It's like we couldn't access this stuff prior because of how energy was within the collective itself and how timelines were playing out. And with AI probably being the biggest thing of all. But what I tapped into was the matrix itself and how it's structured and who was partaking in it. And to the point where I was like, I want to directly communicate to these beings the main beings that helped in the creation of us. I need to understand why they did this. What was scary, at least from the timeline that I tapped into, was I've never thought of this planet or this species as a slave planet. I know people have said that. I've always understood that rather being like a karmic loop. It's a karmic loop cycle planet, and that's why it can be deemed as a slave planet. But This particular prototype, some of these beings did not have good intentions for this prototype. Like, and that's what I tapped into. And it was scary because you want to believe that it's all love and light. You really do. And you tell yourself that. But darkness is a real thing. And the more you expand your light, the more darkness you're actually going to have to, you know what I mean, that you're going to experience equally. There's no bias in that. You're going to have to tap into these other aspects of realities and how it's been manipulated and why it's a lower dimension and what's happened over time. Yeah, their intentions were not necessarily good, and that it was a form of slavery. It actually was a form of slavery, like their entire intentional design. It was like procreation, and then I tapped into the masculine energy and how damaged the masculine energy was and how it had changed over time, and all the distortions that created from the imbalances between the different energies in this reality. I've always felt sympathy for the feminine energy because of how suppressed it was. But the masculine almost screwed itself over because it caused distortions within itself and it hurt itself. And I remember I cried. I broke down and I cried because I had sympathy for the masculine energy because of how it had damaged itself. It almost caused a retardation. Honestly, the word that really came through was like an incest. It's almost like, when you have a bloodline, like a king's bloodline, and they create incest, because they want to keep the power. It was forced into this mode because of the suppression of the feminine energy. It just basically it created distortions. That's what I mean by that's why the incest that's what I was shown. It creates like a distortion because if you have a bloodline that does incest, it creates just like a retardation, within that lineage physically and all of that. It's not functioning properly. And that's what was happening with the masculine. It was just so imbalanced within our collective. But it's and we have masculine and feminine within both of us, right? It doesn't matter what gender you are, you have both energies within you. But it had impacted the male prototype because we're different. The male prototype and female prototype of this planet, they are different, right? And they have different strengths and they were created for different purposes. But I realized that the male species was actually not made to be monogamous. That was what I was shown. And so I'm not trying to offend people out there. You can be monogamous. It's totally possible for the male prototype to be monogamous, but it was created to breed. It was intent, like that's how it was wired. So that's what I'm saying. That when you really you go down the rabbit hole, you start understanding the construct of what we are in and the realities and the distortions of this lower dimension and how it's impacted like these foundational aspects that run the reality, like the masculine and the feminine. I hope people are not misinterpreting what I'm saying. It's not an attack on men or women. It's not lowering the male species. It's necessary because we have to have some people understand this going forward with where humans are going. We have to understand what's happened and the distortions that are playing out in this reality. It's how you understand the matrix, how it's been manipulated, and it's how you heal. It's how, again, it was the first time that I'd tapped into having great compassion for the masculine because it was like a child that didn't know how to process certain things because it was lacking the other energy. You view it, it's like a child that's like stressed out, throwing a tantrum because it's like a toddler and it doesn't understand. You want to hug it and hold it. And now I understand why it's really just so important, and I understand why the divine feminine is rising up now and the role that it's going to play, and the women that are rising up on this planet now. We're in a very powerful time. The women that are rising up on this planet right now are not rising up against men. A lot of men are being threatened by that now because they're misinterpreting what's actually happening. What's happening is spiritual. It's beyond men and women. It's about souls. It's about the soul. So it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Look at the state of the planet and the distortions, how it's being forced now with the timelines. We need men and women to unite So it's going to take certain women to start to rise up. Those old structures, or patriarchy or whatever, they're changing. That world is dying. It's gone. It's phasing out. Women will play a different role. Things will be different. And a lot of people threaten. They're going, it's damaging. It's this. No, no, this is spiritual. This is beyond. This is about the souls that are in those bodies and the gifts and what they can contribute to the healing of the collective. It is going to take both men and women to unite to create harmonization for the higher timeline. So step back and let's remove this judgment of like men shouldn't be doing this and women shouldn't be. No, we're all playing different roles right now, but in a way that's contributing. So it's going to be different to how it's played out for the thousands of years before, because the feminine was suppressed back then. So we need everyone on board. I don't care what gender you are. I just need your soul to be able to contribute in a positive way towards the collective healing in the timeline. This is about unity. That's what it is, and we need to respect the souls for whatever they're doing. And look, in high dimensions, there's no female or male anyway. That's only part of lower constructs that you actually have this level of split where you have these different types of genders.
I was just going to say, you're obviously on a mission because you've got so much to say and you're able to articulate it. And that's not the easiest thing to do. People may not realize how much work it is to research enough to be able to articulate your position for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time. And you're able to do that. And you're always clear about what you're trying to say. You've obviously thought these things out. So I'm in great appreciation of your articulation and your learning. And of course, you have your practical life where you weren't just reading books, you were learning through experience and experiences that you didn't necessarily control. You're just like, hey, I'm having this experience,
It's hard because when you experience it, you're not experiencing it through the third dimensional personality. You're in a very merged state. And I'm like, oh, how do I pull this into like this human experience and explain it to people? So thanks for bearing with me, because it's a lot harder when I'm in the process of doing that. It's because I could go into a higher state and explain it, but they won't understand it. Like people won't understand what I'm talking about. And it's the vibration. When I say that it's scary, it's the vibration of what you're entering into. It is like a very different vibration. And we are vibrational beings. Everything's vibrational resonance. And so when you experience light and darkness, you're experiencing the vibrational reality, of that, which is when it's always uncharted when you go off into the darkness. But I truly believe that the more advanced or more aware you become, the more darkness you have to tap into. It's like we're here to study the darkness because we have to understand how to heal it. It's not about staying in love and light. You've got to go into these uncharted, misty waters sometimes to be able to understand things that other people within the collective, they're not willing to go into those waters.
Agreed. So you were talking about the masculine and the feminine, and we have the Tao Te Ching, which is purely about the feminine nature of nature, the feminine nature of our universe. And for men to take a stance that they're going to try to control and subvert nature is clearly a stance that's going to end in disaster and failure. So it is rather comical, although also tragic, if we look at the events of the last several thousand years in history, where the men try to control both nature and the feminine humans. We see the failure of that. It's a complete 100% failure. It's not like, you did pretty good. No, you didn't do good. You're going against nature. So
look, a lot of men they actually fear the feminine. That's actually the truth. They fear it. They don't understand it. They don't like it. Some of them misunderstand it as weak as well. And I don't think, to be honest, with the important topic of the divine feminine rising, people have to understand that even women are having to relearn what that even is. And it's hard. There's a lot of people who think they know what the divine feminine is, and they don't. It's something we are relearning because there is so much programming and so much distortion that has been playing out for a very long period of time of the suppression of the divine feminine. So everyone is having to relearn this. And that's another reason why women are starting to rise up, and men shouldn't be threatened by it. I really don't I don't think it's a threat. I think it's just they're not used to the way that it has been run. All of these structures, it's been working in a certain way for them. But like, you've just got to get over it because we're phasing out of that reality now. The structures, how men view women, a lot of people think that women, even women themselves, think that the divine feminine is this, it's just a very soft, loving, nurturing, submissive, doesn't say anything. They actually think that's the divine feminine. That's not the divine feminine. The divine feminine is equally as powerful as the masculine. It is very raw and it's very specific in its own way. If we look at the physical anatomy of men and women, these are, again, two different prototypes. We are the same species, but we are not the same prototype. We were built very differently. We were modified differently with different intentions. Men are physically much stronger. They just are. They have many physical advantages that the women really just don't have. But if you're going to actually look at the energetic component, the female is actually probably more advanced. And that's not I'm not putting men down or anything like that, but energetically is just more advanced and based just even on the geometry of the female prototype that's here. It holds geometry that men just don't have. Hence why we can give birth. And you can look into the vesica piscis and the geometry of the womb and it being a portal. These things are extremely powerful, and men have probably taken that for granted for a very long time or been very unaware of it. But I do believe that we can complement each other equally. I do think it's going to take a united effort to change the things on this planet. And women are rising up because there is very weak leadership running this planet right now. It's true. So women are almost being forced into having no choice. Naturally, when there's instability, women respond very differently. When they're in a situation of when it's unsafe for them, they have these natural mechanisms. And that's why they're also rising up right now. It's not just, oh, men are weak. It's not like that. It's the leadership and them having to cater to the rise of the divine feminine for this more harmonious relationship now.
Western men look at women and they say they're having such a easy time flowing through the day. I want it to be like that, but I have to use my left brain logic to plan my day step by step and do this thing, then do another thing. And the woman's just flowing, laughing, loving, hugging, singing. And the guy's just like, God damn it. Now, so then he develops a resentment, and that's pretty much Western society. That's the relationship between men and women. The men are just going, why is it so easy for them to just live? And so there's this huge gap, and no one ever talks about it.
Yeah, look, I think it's just a matter of perception, though, because I don't think that's what's happening to women, or women are experiencing it through such ease and flow. And if you and I don't doubt that men are feeling that way. And again, it's just because of the imbalance that's within the collective itself that men and women are experiencing this. But look, even if you look at the physical body of the woman, I can assure you she is not just having it easy. I mean, the things, again, that we physically go through that you guys don't go through, and the extremes of hormonal changes and having to give birth, and our pain level tolerance is much higher because we actually just experience physical pain more constantly than men do throughout our most of our lives. Do you know what I mean? And then you think of the menstrual cycle and all of these, we're literally bleeding like once a month, like it's like tearing up inside of us. We go through a level of discomfort that is just different from men. And if you guys aren't experiencing the flow or the ease that you guys may be interpreting, you guys created the current structures on the planet, and you've been running it for thousands of years. I mean, we didn't create those systems. It was only men, or it was, this is a man's world. We do not live in a women's world. If it's hard on men, men created it that way, but due to their own distortions. Do you know what I mean? And now men are suffering. Men have had to suffer for that as well. This whole entire time. So again, we just have to go through a restructuring of everything we've ever known to be able to create a more harmonious balance. And when you suppress an energy, right? Not just any energy, the equal to the masculine, that's not going to be a smooth ride when it rises back up. It's going to challenge the masculine on so many different levels. It's going to be a bumpy, uncomfortable ride for both of us. I'm just glad we're at a point where the divine's rising back up now, so we can move towards unity on some level. That we even have that option as the species of human. You know, we're lucky we even have that option. So I hope that we play it right, and I hope that we utilize AI in a harmonious way too, because that's the other very, very big thing that is going to completely change our reality very, very quickly.
Well, you talked in one of your videos about authenticity, and I really resonated with that because, well, you were fully resonating with it during the video. I mean, you were really passionate about suggesting to humanity to not be a people pleaser, but to be in your authentic self. Life will go so much better, even though it seems like people might not like you for you being truly you and setting the boundaries that you really want to. Your authentic self is saying, set this boundary, set this boundary. If you set the boundary, maybe they won't like you at first, but as you say in the video, they're going to respect you. And that's the most, it's the trade-off. They might not say, oh, isn't it wonderful that she's so agreeable? Instead, they're saying, you know what? She set that boundary and I have to respect it. She knows who she is. So if women are living in their authenticity as we make this shift in power, and men also are living in their authenticity and actually feeling and resonating with what they really want, not what they've been told they want, not the bravado, not the truck, not the, the prestige, which is completely ephemeral. It's a total mirage. Prestige doesn't even exist. It's just, but men are seeking this prestige. Like, if only people could love me and worship my achievement. And it's like, nobody gives a fuck about your achievement, So there is no prestige. There's only the illusion of prestige in men's minds. So if we can both live in our authenticity, I mean, then we have a chance, otherwise we're lost.
It's so important for the human experience to be able to find your alignment, because that's vibrational power. You know what I mean? Like, authenticity is a vibration. Alignment is a vibration. Again, I think it's the key to human happiness, to be honest. I think that over time, we've just created all of these systems that aren't even real, and society and traditions, and we're just running off of this programming that doesn't really matter. It's serving other things like business models, or like these larger agendas that don't actually matter. And people always say, oh, but it's always been like that. No, it hasn't. There's just new agendas being created like every few hundred years. Do you know what I mean? And none of them have been serving us. They've just been serving agendas. So I think it's time. Like, we live in a world where we actually do have more options than maybe the past. I don't know how many centuries. We had less options even then. Do you know what I mean? And most people were living in a much more denser survival mode. And there was less equality back then between, different options. We're almost privileged in a way. We still have so much programming that we have to step away from and recode. But we have the privilege of different options right now. And I think honoring your authenticity is really doable. I really do. I think it's something that we can achieve. I think that it's honoring your authenticity and who you really are is how you walk towards the sovereign self and rediscover who you really are. You rediscover your divinity in that process, and you find your alignment. When you find your alignment, you find states of joy. You're experiencing your own creative preference of happiness. You're working with the quantum field on a whole other level when you're in your authenticity. Again, you're harnessing creative energy from the quantum field. All of these things contribute to the collective consciousness that we are within. And that's how we can do our part. That's finding our joy and our happiness. And I know the channel of Bashar talks about this all the time. He's like, follow the formula, follow your highest joy, because he's talking about the vibrational states of authenticity and what it allows you to experience and pull from the quantum field, from your higher self, from your sovereign self. I mean, these are all magical components in a way to mastering the human experience and being able to utilize your unique identity to the best and to its highest potential to, again, contribute to the collective consciousness, to your own individual highest potential, which will help heal the collective consciousness. It will reduce the distortions that are playing out within the collective consciousness. And you will also be able to attract and have the right things gravitate towards you when you're in your authentic state. The right people, your soul tribe, your maybe correct soul companion, the things that you're good at, right? Imagine denying your writing, your ability, your creative writing. I mean, imagine all of the energy that you're denying yourself, and the vibrations that you'd be denying. I mean, what a shame. How sad. So that's why I think authenticity is key. And again, this whole entire construct is built off fear. It is. All these mechanisms, this whole matrix, it's fear-based. And if you can overcome that, we can help shift this reality. What's the point of living your life in the way someone else, holds those standards? What's the point of having the ego? What's the point of being here if you can't expand in your own unique way and honor that? What is the point? You will never find your highest happiness. It's just going to be compromise after compromise after compromise. And the collective consciousness needs more individuals to step back into their power and remember their authenticity. And when I say authenticity, by the way, I'm not talking about who your ego necessarily thinks it is. It's about honoring the vibrations that you are best at amplifying uniquely, if that makes sense. It's being able to, again, harness higher energy for your highest potential, for the collective, and for your own expansion. So it's not necessarily what your brain or your ego defines as, well, I know who I am and blah, blah, blah. It's bigger than that.
Well, you've talked about prioritizing our own alignment. Culture is telling us that our highest joy is possibly having 8 or 10 beers, fucking a random stranger that you never even met them until that night, and you don't remember quite what they look like the next day. And that's the highest joy. That's culture. That's culture saying, yeah, getting drunk is the best. And I was so wasted. It's like, if I ever hear anybody say, I was so wasted again, your resonant being does not want to have its consciousness deadened and distorted by alcohol. You don't want to merge with somebody who you just met, and it's that you're taking on some dark energies from them and they're taking on some from you. And it's just not going to be good. So that's not, so culture wants to steer us toward these weird outcomes. All we have to do is to take a deep breath and go, what do I really want today?
Yeah, again, it's just all the programming that exists, and people just thinking that is normal and associating, their highest joy and fulfillment with all these things that they've been told or sold, basically. I mean, alcohol, That's all. They're just companies selling you their products so they can make money off of you. Like that's all it actually is. It's not that alcohol actually does anything for you. It just makes you maybe escape. And the more you escape, the less you're going to find your authenticity. And, look, humans don't currently have a lot of control over their energy centers in their human body. And that's why they also do a lot of those things. And again, men and women are wired differently. So that can mean something different for each one of them. But again, if you go towards your alignment and you stop giving a shit about any of that, you live in less fear. And that I think that's probably the basis of what I'm trying to say is you just care less, but in a way where it means that you just don't live in fear anymore. Fear doesn't dictate the moves that you make, your long-term decisions, or what you think you're lacking, or what you desire. You can just kind of drown all of that fake stuff out, and because that's just fear.
So interesting that you keep mentioning this dichotomy between fear and progressing as a race, let's say, because
Yeah.
or progressing as individuals, because when I was younger, I was probably 30 and I was pet sitting for some people in a small town in California. And it was very quiet, lots of trees around, and it was very idyllic. And I was just about to fall asleep. And I was probably taking my last breath just before falling asleep. And in that moment, my entire body arched kind of toward the ceiling. I mean, it was still on the bed, but it kind of arched like this physically. And all of my cells became these ecstatic resonators of pure, it was way beyond an orgasm. It was like my whole body
Yeah.
was beyond that pleasure. It was so pleasurable, every cell. And I imagined myself moving toward the ceiling, and I was about to leave the, I could see myself leaving. I wasn't looking down. I was still watching myself sort of leave, and I was about to hit the ceiling and go outside into the stars. But fear came in because it was raining outside. There was a light rain. It was cold. And I thought, well, I'm going to be cold and get wet if I go outside. And so as soon as I had that fear,
Fear.
it stopped. The ecstasy just
Yep.
went, meow, boom, back to normal. And I was like, oh, I shouldn't have said no. I shouldn't have said no.
Yeah. It's the foundation of this matrix. It's completely fear driven, but it's also a byproduct of the polarity that we're experiencing, in that level of separation. So it's just much harder in this reality that we're in, and that's the biggest trip of the human experience. It's a tough reality to play out. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it definitely comes with its challenges when you're in such a lower dimension. You totally lose that sovereign self. Like it's something you really have to just rediscover. You have to choose to rediscover that. Otherwise, you'll be running off those default programs that are within the collective consciousness. But I'm glad you got to experience that. That's awesome. I experience stuff like that all the time. And I wish that for everyone. It's a very euphoric and blissful state when you can get into high states. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I didn't try for a blissful state. I didn't try for an unusual paranormal experience. I was just lying in bed about to go to sleep. I had no sort of training or reading that was telling me that this is something that might happen one day. Nothing like that. I was just reading regular old books. I mean, they're outside of academia, but they were not about this. And so I didn't know what the heck happened. So I wrote a poem about it called Cold Fire, which is how I described the tingling that was throughout my body. It felt like cold fire. And so that's the only way that I could engage it, was sort of to describe it in a poetic way. I didn't understand it as a Kundalini awakening, you might say. And a
Yeah.
woman that I met months later, who I told this to, who was sort of a matriarch of an area there, almost like a tribe of people outside the town, she said, "Oh, that's Kundalini energy." And I was like, "Oh."
Yeah.
My eyes got really big, and I was like, "Kundalini, wow!" And I have to research this. What is Kundalini? And like that's how naive I was about anything like this. And so I think most people, we don't have the training. Most people in the matrix, I was in the matrix, fully. We just don't have the training to know what these experiences are, even if we have them, and then we go, well, what was that? And we just go back to our day-to-day, go to work, eat and sleep. And that's it.
It's sad because you can activate these states, more regularly, and people would be experiencing reality on a whole other level. And I can go into those states and it can last like, oh my God, just it can last days, weeks of maybe not at that intensity, but like a residue of that blissful euphoria. And it probably was a Kundalini thing, but I was going to say there's several factors that could have led to that experience. Could have been a combination of the energy running through your body at that time, higher aspects of yourself, and if you had stimulated something even through awareness or what you were exposing yourself to or reading, it can be the interaction of higher aspects, or honestly even energy forms that are beyond this dimension. There's many different factors, but it always still comes down to like your energy centers. Your energy centers are being impacted on some level by something, and it's caused it to stimulate or activate. I remember you asking much earlier in the interview about certain things that was a catalyst to my experience. There's so much I haven't mentioned in this interview that are really, really big that throughout my journey. For example, I've experienced Kundalini as well. That was in my mid-20s. I've received Shaktipat. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Shaktipat, but I've received that to my third eye from a man he'd studied in India for like 30 years, meditations and all, and Kundalini and all of that. And that was definitely life-changing. The thing is, when you do experience them, depending on your vibrational state at that time, you can experience a drop, like a drug, like you're coming down from a drug in the days after. And that's because you've experienced like a level of, it's like almost like a purification, but then because of the density that's still within you or traumas or whatever blockages, it's going to like make that rise to the surface. So it can be very unpleasant for a period of time after that as well, because it almost forces you to address things.
I'm sure that you've had experiences on a regular basis that have led you to do what you do, which is to do your best as if you're on a mission to help humanity understand that we don't have to be just what we think we are in this matrix.
Yeah, we're more than that. We're multidimensional beings, and that's definitely part of why I'm here. And I could elaborate on that even more. It would take another interview, though, to really get into the specifics of my journeys, what I've experienced. I've had my Nadi palm leaf. I mean, all the mediums, the friends that I know, the exchanges that we've had. Oh my God, like how I got to this stage, the people that came into my life. I mean, again, it would take like a whole other interview, but I'm all about empowering the individual because I'm just tired of the fear that is controlling this planet. And I feel sorry for humans in many ways because they don't have to exist in that state. They can activate a much higher timeline. They can activate so much higher potential. For me, it's a service. It's a service. I've dedicated so many aspects. I've given up many, many things in my life because I wanted to slowly shift my life in this direction where this is all I focus on. And this is just me giving back. It's like the highest purpose. It's like we're very spiritual beings. And if we can manage to merge with the higher self as much as we can in this lifetime, it's going to show you paths and open doors that you can never imagine previously. It is honestly going to improve your life and shift your timeline. And your higher self is your best friend. It is, it's your soulmate. That's your true soulmate. That's the relationship that you should be nourishing in this life. No one else completes you in this lifetime. This whole you have to get married and be with someone until you die, this is a human structure. This doesn't exist in other realities. You can find a soul companion to enjoy the journey with, But at the end of the day, it's between you and God. It's between you and source energy. Like, and it always was from the beginning. Is everything was just a mirror in this whole reality. Everything was a reflection. Every partner you ever had, if you had children, like they were just mirrors to teach you more about yourself. No one was here to destroy you. Only if you want it to be that way, it can be that way. But everyone has played a role in your life. And the more you merge with your higher self, the more you're going to realize. Even the worst person that you've ever imagined, an ex-partner that really ruined your life in many ways, you'll understand that, oh my God, I can like completely alchemize that entire experience to my advantage. Everything. So energetically, whatever happens to you, if it's bad, for example, you can alchemize that to the equal in the opposite direction. So sometimes if it's a really bad thing, that's just an opportunity. That's all it is. You can reverse that to serve you. No energy has a final form. Nothing does. You can change it to your will, whatever you want. And as humans become more cosmic beings, they're going to understand that about literally everything. I mean, even their own energy structures within them, their cells, you could recode everything if you really wanted to. Yeah. So we're not at that stage yet, but we're really on the cusp. That door has now opened, and we're going to keep exploring that as time progresses. But yeah, I don't think anything else matters. Like nothing else fucking matters. I know I'm not the only person who thinks this way, but it's all bullshit. All this noise, it's all bullshit. You are just here to exist, for source to evolve. All these other structures that you exist in are bullshit. They are man-made, or they're influenced by beings that have their own agendas. Okay, you don't have to play to any of those rules if you don't want to energetically. So the more of us that stand up and do that, the more we'll shift this entire reality and its structures.
And you're here to let humanity know, or to help us remember, that we can alchemize every experience. And you mentioned something called holographic reprinting, which I think is a genius phrase. What is exactly holographic reprinting? And then we'll go toward ending this mega session that has been so enlightening for us.
Yeah. So look, I didn't create that term. There is a woman online who specializes in teaching that kind of thing. I just can't remember the name off the top of my head. But I do support the fractal holographic universe. I really do. After everything that I've tapped into, in fact, I can't come to any other conclusion but supporting that nature of reality. And there being aspects of it really being a type of organic simulation. So if we understand that, then we have to understand that we can reprint and restructure anything in our reality, including anything within our own timeline. So you can't go back and you can't change the past, but you can reprint on the past. A lot of people who do ayahuasca, mushrooms, or who go into these extreme states of breaking out of their current reality, you know what I mean? Even though it's there all the time for them to access, they will experience things where they will have a flashback to a moment in time. For example, a trauma from their childhood. They will get brought back almost like a movie. Yeah, like getting rewound back to a time in it, that's how it appears. It's like these different memories that pop up, and you can actually not relive it necessarily, but you can revisit it. And that's what they say they experience, and that they actually experience healing through this process of revisiting this point in the timeline through consciousness, that the whatever ayahuasca, whatever has helped them to experience. And then you can reprint sort of the vibration of that point in your timeline, which will change the outcome of where you're at right now. Some people don't they'll want to fight what I said. They'll want to go, no, there's only now. There's only now. And it's like, yes, there is only now. You're just going to that now in the timeline. That's it. So you're not
Well,
changing the past, you're just reprinting, like you're in a holographic system. So you can do what there's a thing called holographic reprinting. It can alter the timeline. It can really alter your present, but you're still in the now then. You're just experiencing it through consciousness. You're not physically necessarily back, experiencing. You haven't gone back in time to experience that.
right. I mean, I think of time as, I mean, after thinking about it a lot, because, in the spiritual community or the SSP insiders, whistleblowers community, some people are saying there is no time. Some people are saying there is time, different timelines. So even somebody who says there is no time in the same conversation 2 minutes later, we'll talk about different timelines. And I'm like, wait, didn't you just say there's no time? So it's, to me, it's super simple in the sense of a DVD that you put into a DVD player. You can access any scene of the movie. You can start the movie at the last scene if you want. You can access any time in that story, or you can watch the story from beginning to end. The story has time in it. In beginning, everything was fine. Then some tragic conflict happened. Then there's some resolution, and then the story ends. Okay. But if we step outside of the DVD, then we can just press a button and go, I want to watch that scene.
Yeah, it's funny because there is no time and there is only, sequential moments of now, 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 now. And timeline is not an actual reference of time. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but it's more a vibrational state. So when a timeline shifts, it's just a vibrational shift. It's not actually time itself shifting. But I'm not disagreeing with what you just said. There's so much truth to that analogy that you just gave. Yeah, timeline, whenever I use timeline, I never referencing actual time. It's like our reality is built up of like temporal realities, and like an infinite amount of potentials and probabilities. And so when you say that there's a timeline shift, there's nothing to do with time. It's literally just a vibrational shift all within the reality. So reality will be experienced in a different octave. So you know how you're saying it's all vibrations and sound, like it's all frequencies. Yeah, it's just like changing the key on the piano. That's all it is. It's got nothing to do with time because everything is a sequential is now. Like everything is just now, 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 now. But people don't understand that at the same time, just because you're in the now, it doesn't mean that the past doesn't exist and isn't still happening. So it's still happening. So you can actually just use consciousness to go to that part of the timeline or that vibrational part of the timeline, like energy cords. See, because nothing disappears. It's almost like everything is recorded in history like a quantum computer. So you could, every time anyone says the references the Akashic records or anything like that, you're just referencing like this energy database that exists, and Interstellar is such a great example of that, the movie, because he goes into this library where he accesses, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but he accesses a different point in space-time reality. He jumps into it and where he's actually accessing his daughter and he can communicate with he's trying to stimulate a connection, but he's in a different place, like in time, so to speak. But so how like a psychic can access information is they're like opening that database and they can still retrieve the energetic data because it's still there. So that's what consciousness can do. It's not limited to space-time reality. We think that the movie's playing out like this. Again, it's that linear concept and interpretation of humans saying, oh, well, this is the start to the finish. There's no start and finish. There's just different vibrational states that are existing, like all through each other. And you can just tap into the different frequencies. A psychic is going to tap into multiple frequencies. They're just listening to multiple frequency bands, different radio stations all at the same time. They just have that option. We all have that option. It's so multifaceted. And when I say you can connect to these different soul fractals that are existing, that's because they're still existing. People will say, I'm tapping into a past, a past lifetime. It's not a past lifetime. It's just a different timeline. That's all it is. you're experiencing a different state of awareness through a different soul fractal, you can still tap into it if you wanted to. I mean, if there's anything that psychedelics have shown us, it's that this is real, that you can actually do that. But humans aren't evolved enough yet, generally speaking. So they have to use something external to be able to free their mind to show them what's actually happening the whole entire time. When you take a psychedelic, it's not the psychedelic that's showing you. You can access that at any point in time. I've never taken a psychedelic in my life, and look what I'm accessing. Never. I've never needed to. You don't have to. You can build that bridge yourself if you want to. It's actually much more powerful because you've got way more control when you build the bridge yourself. People get scared. They go, I need the mushrooms. I need it. It's the answer. And they'll create a dependency on this external substance. And they'll go, because it's Mother Nature. This is Gaia. This is the planet. And it's like, you're part of the planet too. Why? Like, just use yourself. You are a form of the mushroom. It's just you don't know how to tap into that yet. So you're relying on that substance because it forces you. It's like a shortcut. It forces you. Do the work. You'll never need a substance in your life. You'll be able to access it whenever you want, and you'll be less scared. Because when something when a darker type of vibrational force interacts with you or whatever, you're going to be like, I built this motherfucking bridge. This is me. I tapped in myself. I didn't rely on anything else to do this. If I want to leave, I can leave. I'm about empowering people. We can do this. This is real. You can access any point. Space-time reality is not, it doesn't have the construct that you think, that your little human brain is interpreting. It's unlimited. You are an unlimited multidimensional being. You can tap into anything you fucking want. So, yeah.
This is why I like you, because you're so impassioned, and through your passion, it feels like you're an empowered person because you have this mission, and it's like, you're here to serve, to teach, to help, to enlighten, to open minds. And you're not trying to tell people what to think. You're just trying to say, look, we have been told what to think for thousands of years. And maybe it's not that way, because we talked before even doing the interview about what the talk should be called. And we thought human sovereignty would be good. Now I'm thinking mushroom woman would be a good title, I am the mushroom, that would be amazing. But I mean, human sovereignty is still good. I'm just thinking it's such an amazing idea. I am the mushroom. It's like that book, I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. And then that became that movie with Will Smith. I am legend. I am mushroom, and it's like, what is that? What? I am mushroom. Yeah. Well, watch the video, watch the interview, find out what I am mushroom means,
Just an example of a external substance that can help you access reality in its true form. Because see, when a person's tapping or they use a mushroom or whatever, they think they're going somewhere. It's like, it's just showing you what's all around you at all times. You're not going anywhere. You're not even necessarily going into another dimension. You're just seeing all of them or other ones finally being merged because your brain didn't know how to do that previously. It was only in one frequency band. It's just showing you true reality. But I still think it's the sovereign self. And even though, yes, I enjoy maybe identifying with a mission. It's just my own sovereignty. I just recognize my own sovereignty, and I want to share it with other people, like within themselves.
Right. I remember that Alan Watts used to sort of parry people's accusations that he was talking to make money or whatever. He said, I talk because it's a dance for me. It's totally enjoyable. It's play. This is what I'd love to do. Yes, he did get a good salary for having these seminars, and he demanded a high salary, and then he gave most of it away to charity. But he said, if I'm going to go, I want to have a lot of money coming my way, and then I can decide what to do with it. But he's doing it for the dance,
Yes, and that's the game of this reality. Like, don't be attached to anything. This is very temporary. It's all a temporary illusion. And if you can use money to help create, new systems or help other people, then so be it. Have all the money in the world. We're still within that structure, and eventually it will phase out. And other systems don't rely on money for anything. You know what I mean? Like, they don't operate through these monopoly systems. They're more evolved. But you can manifest anything you want. I really truly believe that if you are like, yeah, you know what, money loves me and I'm going to use it to help other people, and I'm going to do it and use me as an example, as someone who can teach good things and blah, blah, blah. You can like have these agreements and you can manifest and you can do whatever you want with it. Money is just a tool currently in this current vibration. It's just a tool. It's not like good or bad. It's like energy. It's not good or bad. You can use it in whatever way you want. It really comes down to your own agenda. Do you want to be service to self, or do you want to be service to others? It all plays out, but we do have the power to, I think, manifest whatever we want. But I mean, again, I'm not one of those people that are like the law of attraction, or I don't focus on on those things so much, because I think people have karmic cycles playing out and different cycles, that they're experiencing, where they have to go through certain things. Sometimes you have to go through lack, just part of the experience or part of your agreement. Sometimes you can't heal things. Maybe, one thing that I do want to state is the people that I respect more than anyone, like out of all the souls on this planet that are here, is actually really disabled people, or people who have incarnated with an extremely high level of limitation, particularly physical, because that soul has, oh my, the level of humility that it experiences, the level of limitation, how much how testing that is, the lack that you would experience, the ego, like, wow. And some of those souls are some of the most beautiful people you will ever meet, despite all of their limitations, the humility that they're able to embody. They're the souls. If you come to me, and I know a lot of really wealthy people, but if you come to me and you're like, oh, I'm so successful, it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm like, that's great. You played that game really well, made it work in favor for you for whatever reason. But that's not necessarily the highest challenge of this reality and what your soul can get from it. The people who incarnate with such a level of disability, they're the souls that I admire the most. They make me cry. Like, I will break down and cry out of just pure respect of what their soul has to endure, and the humility and love that they can still share. That for me is a respectable soul. That is someone who has played a game very differently, but has achieved greatly spiritually. So I just want to throw that in there. It's very important, because it's very distorted how people view success and what achievement is. It's very, very different depending on your soul. So,
right. It's almost as if, if somebody in a wheelchair has attained this level of both compassion for others. They're not even thinking about themselves. They're thinking about you, yep, and how you're feeling in the conversation. And so through this limitation, they've somehow like blossomed into this higher level, higher resonance being. Then you've got the successful business person who comes along, as you say, and they haven't blossomed, they've achieved. So that's completely different. Achieving in the society is storing money in a bank. And to me, that's always been sort of, I've never resonated with that. So I don't store money at a bank. I just go toward knowledge, and I try to have relationships with people who I resonate with. And that's pretty much it. I'm not like trying to gain prestige, money. I don't want people to think anything of me, A, B, C, D through Z. I don't care if they think any of those things of me. It doesn't matter. What matters is the resonance of the day. I'm out there watering the trees. That's what matters. I'm with the trees. The trees have a really great energy. I'm resonating with the trees. That's what matters to me. And then if someone comes and goes, I have a money-making scheme for you, man. This is amazing. We got crypto. We got time. And it's like, you do? Oh, okay. Well, good. I want you to go do that. You know, I have no stake in
Yeah.
that. I don't care. So yeah, I understand that. And there is this incredible example of someone who has physical limitations who oftentimes is advanced as a soul.
Very. Yeah. Sometimes I've spoken to people and they'll have a family member that is very retarded, or you know what I mean? They'll they can't speak, or they can't walk. They basically are completely dependent on other people for everything. They are sometimes the most advanced souls in that family. They have come there and they are allowing to experience a level of humility and limitation that takes it can take a very advanced soul to be able to experience that. Imagine the ego dynamic or the pride involved. Like it's um they can be the most advanced souls. Like I honestly think they are some of the most advanced souls on the planet. I really do. They're contributing in a different way, but to experience such a lack and limitation is difficult in such a physical, material reality and society. So, kudos to those people. I don't hate, like, I don't think all people with money are bad, though. You can be a very high vibrational person and really just have mastered manifesting at the same time. And we need some of those people too, because we need them to help also change some of the systems or invest in good people, that have good ambitions that can help change the structures and the new paradigms. And we're really at a level or a stage where the whole world is falling right now. It is. We're watching the paradigms fall. It's going to be uncomfortable for a while, but we're going to help also build new ones. So people are rising up and starting to do that. We can change. We need new leaders. We need new structures that will serve a higher timeline now. So, and some of that will take some money. So if the more good-hearted, wealthy people that we have, the better. That's actually for us because it'll help us through this shift while we're still depending on that tool to a certain extent.
Right. There's so much money available out there, and it's just a question of where people direct it, So yeah, money can help us move forward if it's directed toward a high resonance mission, I guess you'd say. So,
Yeah.
Irena, thank you for all of your amazing.
Oh boy, we really went over time, didn't we? Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's probably about 2 hours by now, right? So that's all right.
It's almost 3 hours.
Is it almost 3 hours?
Yeah. It's
Well,
fine. It's totally fine. I just looked at the clock and I'm sorry I had to interrupt you.
that's all right. That's all right. I mean, like we agreed in the beginning before we started, whatever the resonance of the moment is, we'll just keep going if it feels like we should. So, I mean, I felt like I had so much to learn from you, and I really appreciate you being so forthright and articulate. You're not wasting people's time by going, oh, let me think. I haven't really thought this out. You're saying, look, I've thought this out, so I'm just going to say it. Here it is, blam. And by the way, 10 more things. So I really appreciate the way you do that. And so, I mean, I have other questions that I wrote down for you, but that's okay. My feeling is that we accomplished our mission, our resonance mission today.
This is my highest joy. It really is. I love it. And I'm very intuitive though. So I knew this was like, no, this is okay to do. This is an exchange that should happen. And that's why I agreed to it so quickly. So yeah, that's why I was like, sounds fun. Let's do it. I just love sharing this information and I just want to make my whole entire life sort of revolve around it because it just makes it enjoyable for me, like the whole human experience and helping people. And so if I've helped you in any way, it's my absolute pleasure. And thank you for taking so much time to listen.
Yeah, I mean, for 6 days, I've been watching your videos, and I must mention, I just realized I almost forgot this, but I must mention that I've watched your video of you singing the cover of the Moana tune, Know Who You Are, about 1,000 times over the last 3 days. It is so good. I'm so impressed with your emotional storytelling. I don't know if I can speak for all of humanity, but I'll just say maybe all of humanity could benefit from you singing more.
Thank you. Voice was my goal much earlier on in life. It was much more focused. I did voice work more professionally. Like I was really pursuing to be a singer. And that really only changed because of how horrible the industry is. And I was going through such a conflicting spiritual blossoming and awakening. I actually pulled back and I was like, maybe my voice is better off speaking and sharing this kind of stuff, but I can maybe incorporate singing somewhere along the line, again, which I think I will actually. But I think I had to find myself and that who I really was and who I really am. So now I think I'll be able to sing even better because I think it's just going to be coming from a sovereign place within myself. I'll know why I'm singing and exactly what I'm saying. So the frequency of that can hopefully impact people because it's a very powerful tool. But again, so is speaking and writing, and I'm passionate about all three.
You're also writing a book, or at least you're thinking of writing a book. So tell us about that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh yeah, so okay, I'm going to try and make this really brief because it's actually a very long story, but it's basically it's been a lifelong thing where I had several psychics come into my life, keep telling me about this book that I'm meant to write, that I'm going to channel, and then it becomes really successful. And it's just something that's happened for probably about a decade now. And I even in my Nadi palm leaf reading, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's literally stated in there. And it talks about all the success that I get from different types of publishing. But there's a book that I've got to write. And I recently met up with a medium, a really high level medium, really high level. Like, I mean, it takes 1 year to get in with this guy. And I'd already met him through mutual friends and stuff who yeah. So anyway, I really wanted to talk to him because I knew he had a message for me. So I waited almost a year and I saw him last month. And the first thing when he was talking to the spirits, they started grilling me. First of all, he was like, you do the work that I do. You're meant to be doing that. And I was like, yes, I know. I'm a medium. Like, I already know. And he's like, why aren't you doing sessions? And I was like, I'm not really focused on doing the one-on-one sessions at this stage of my life. And then he says, oh my God, like they started grilling me and they're like, why haven't you written the book? We've been giving you so many information for years now. And you're not writing this book. And I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. It was just so much information. I never knew what to focus on. It was just so broad. And it's like the timelines were being affected and I was going through this process and I needed to understand certain foundations. I needed to understand the holographic perspectives of foundation, and I needed to understand the AI integration because it's very, very big. It's a huge part of this timeline and reality, and it's only more recent. And so I said, it's not like I haven't been writing. I have been on this journey for quite a few years on social media, and there's so much that I can pull from all the videos that I've ever made or things that I've written. But I think I do understand what I'm going to start writing. And again, it was a really only this year that I was like consciousness and sovereignty. And I do think I know what the title of the book is and that I'm ready to start writing. But I honestly could not have forced it any earlier. It was already coming out in like these little increments or like these little vlogs. And now I think I know how to kind of do it. I never written a book before, but I definitely think it's going to highlight sovereignty and empowerment.
100%. Well, here we are doing our best to be authentic in a wild matrix that is telling us to be inauthentic and prodding us to go off of our paths. We're doing our best. Everyone's doing their best, and we're going to just keep doing that. So, Irena Byriel, I appreciate your time, and I think my audience is going to appreciate your time. I really appreciate everything that you've said today. I really do.
Thank you for listening and thanks for the interview. And maybe we'll do another one down the track.
That'd be lovely.
Bye.
I have crossed the horizon to find you. I know your name. They have stolen the heart from inside you. This does not define you. This is not who you are. You